You know, I find the idea of exorcising a mute demon, isang demonyong pipi, extremely fascinating. It brings back to my memory my experience of visiting a country that seemed to me back then like it had been possessed by a mute demon. I am, of course, talking about Myanmar, a country that we knew better as Burma in my elementary school days. By the way, I'm sure you have noticed that Myanmar has been in my daily mass intentions at San Roque Cathedral since the day the military junta in that country started cracking down on peaceful protesters in Yangon and other cities and arresting the dissenters and opposition leaders. I remember it was in 1995, if my memory serves me right. 26 years ago now, when I first visited Myanmar to give a one-week seminar on the Bible at the major seminary of the Archdiocese of Taungji, a mountain province in Myanmar with cool weather, a little bit like our Baguio City. I remember being asked to wait inside an interrogation room along with very few other foreigners who had just arrived at the airport in Yangon. The interrogator was a military man who had a menacing AK-47 rifle strapped on his shoulder as he opened each of my bags and started asking me what my purpose was in Myanmar. I had been instructed to say I was a tourist, but the man saw all my notes with me for my lectures. He could hardly speak English, so I could hardly communicate with him. I think he finally let go of me after he got tired asking me the same question over and over again, and I kept giving him the same answer over and over again. E di napagod siya. He let me out, finally. As soon as I stepped out of the airport, I started seeing muted people. Very different from noisy Manila. The whole city struck me as being eerily silent. People were squatting on street corners and spitting what I thought was blood everywhere, only to find out later on that it was saliva reddened from chewing what we call in Filipino nganga, betel nut. But it seemed so bloody real to me, it made me wonder if these people were not bleeding deep inside from silently swallowing all the abuse that their own military was inflicting on them. I came to Myanmar upon the request of the former Archbishop of Taungji, Archbishop Matthias Shwe. I am not even sure if he is still alive. During that time, when the military had closed down universities, higher institutes of learning, because they were afraid that the schools might embolden the young students, including seminarians, to join the protest movements. And during the land trip from the city of Yangon to Taunji, up north, I saw a military detachment after almost every kilometer. Ganyang kadami ang sundalo sa kanila. And the whole scene reminded me of the overly militarized country that we also used to be in the Philippines when we were still under the dictatorship. And we're also still possessed by a mute demon. I remember, right at the airport, I was required to exchange $200 US. And that was all the money that I had with me. Perhaps in the military's desperate effort to pump in some foreign exchange into their dying economy, which had suffered a lot from the economic sanctions imposed on their government from outside. For just $200 bills, sa maniwala kayo't hindi, I was given a whole bag of severely inflated Burmese currency, which reminds me of my parents' stories about the worthless pesos, the worthless peso bills that circulated in the Philippines during the Japanese occupations. Japanese occupation, yung tinatawag nilang Mickey Mouse money. Even the once beautiful lake, Eerily, yun ang kanilang parang Taal Lake o Laguna de Bay. Even their once beautiful lake, the pride of Myanmar, which used to have crystal clear jade blue water, looked like it was bleeding. But the color was not red. It was colored milky coffee brown because of the severe erosions caused by the uncontrolled logging and heavy deforestation. I remember very clearly, I could not get people back then to talk about the political situation, not even in casual conversations. They would, suspiciously look around first. Baka kasi someone might be listening. They would speak in whispers, obviously for fear that they too might end up in jail. When the military staged a coup d'etat again, just a month and a half ago, after losing in the recent election, because obviously the people really wanted civilian authority over the military. Natalo sila. They arrested all their enemies, their opposition, headed by Aung San Suu Kyi. And the people said, parang naulit na naman. They'd say in French, déjà vu. Back to the same old situation as before. Well, I don't think so. I would say yes and no. Yes, it's military dictatorship all over again. But no, because the mute demon is already gone. That's big deal. The people are no longer afraid to speak out in protest. And the scenes that are shown on television speak for themselves. Young protesters are no longer intimidated. They're not afraid of tear gas, truncheons, fire hoses, and even live bullets. And they also opened their doors to the protesters when the military tried to arrest them. And it is so heartwarming to read inspiring reports of religious leaders stepping out, even Buddhist monks and Catholic nuns and seminarians. They dared to stand or even kneel before the riot police, begging them to please not shoot at the protesters. The prophet Jeremiah, in our first reading today, is speaking about a different kind of possession. Not a mute demon, but a deaf demon. And I think that is the kind of demon that is presently possessing the military junta in Myanmar. They think they can just ignore the loud voice of dissent, even in this age of social media. They are terribly wrong. Sabi ni Jesus, a house divided by itself cannot stand. Of course, he is saying this in answer to those who accuse him of being an agent of Beelzebul, the prince of demons. Because he was exorcising, prinsipe daw siya ng mga demonyo. Demonyo. That is actually the most common method used by repressive governments in order to silence their people. Demonize them when they speak out. Tawagin silang komunista, leftists, subversives, terrorists, or even drug dealers. Jesus says, even demons cannot afford disunity. And let us not forget that some people can also unite themselves around an evil purpose. Some people can be one in their fanatical beliefs, and their victims can also be one in fear. They can be possessed not just individually, but collectively by a mute demon. So, I do not think Myanmar is back to the same old situation at all. Na-exorcise na sila a long time ago. Now, it is their government that needs exorcism, so that their minds and their ears and their hearts can be opened to the voices of their young people who are no longer willing to allow a repressive government to deprive them of their future. They will also no longer allow themselves to be possessed ever again. Never again to be possessed by a mute demon.